As my labor pains started, I asked my husband to please take me to the hospital. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she started faking her illness, saying, "Son, please come here, I need you, it's extremely urgent." So my husband rushed to her as I was screaming for help. She looked at me in disgust and said, "Stop it, can't you hear my mommy needs me? Endure that pain, and if I hear you screaming again it won't end well for you." As soon as he was about to leave, his mother looked at me and smirked and said, "He's mine, not yours, remember that." I didn't say anything or scream. I called 911, and when they came I left with them, and left a note that made my husband go pale. My name is Zoe, and this is the story of how my marriage imploded on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Let me start from the beginning. I met Lucas 5 years ago at a coffee shop near my office. He was charming, attentive, and everything I thought I wanted in a partner. The red flags were there from the start, but love has a funny way of making you colorblind. His mother, Vanessa, was intense. That's the polite way to put it. From our very first meeting, she made it clear that no woman would ever be good enough for her precious boy. Lucas was 32 and still lived with his mother when we met. I thought it was temporary, maybe he was saving money or helping her out. But as our relationship progressed, I realized this wasn't a practical arrangement, it was an emotional dependency that ran both ways. Vanessa had never married after Lucas's father left when he was 10, and she'd poured all her energy into raising Lucas as a single mother. The problem was, she never stopped treating him like he was 10 years old. When Lucas proposed after 2 years of dating, I was over the moon. I thought marriage would finally give us the independence we needed. Vanessa had other ideas. She inserted herself into every aspect of our wedding planning. She wanted to choose my dress, the venue, the menu, even the flowers. When I politely declined her suggestions, she would run to Lucas in tears, claiming I was being cruel and ungrateful. Lucas always took her side. "She just wants to help, Zoe. She's so excited about the wedding. Can't you just let her have this?" The pattern was established early. Vanessa's feelings mattered more than mine, and Lucas would always choose her comfort over my boundaries. After we married, things got worse. Lucas insisted we move into the house he'd inherited from his grandmother, the same house where Vanessa lived. "It's temporary," he promised. "Just until we save enough for our own place." That was 3 years ago. Living with Vanessa was a nightmare. She had keys to every room, including our bedroom. She would walk in unannounced, rearrange my things, and comment on everything from how I cooked to how I cleaned to how I dressed. When I complained to Lucas, he'd shrug and say, "That's just how she is. She means well." The worst part was how she treated me in front of others versus when we were alone. In public, she was sweetness and light, the devoted mother-in-law who just wanted to help. But when Lucas wasn't around, her mask slipped. She'd make cutting remarks about my appearance, my job, my cooking. She'd move my belongings and then deny it when I asked. She'd use my expensive skincare products and toiletries, then replace them with cheap drugstore versions, claiming she was helping me save money. When I got pregnant last year, I was thrilled. Finally, I thought, we'd have our own family. Lucas would understand that we needed our own space, our own life. I was naive. Vanessa's behavior during my pregnancy was unbearable. She appointed herself the pregnancy expert, despite never having any children after Lucas. She criticized every decision I made, what I ate, how much I exercised, the prenatal vitamins I took. She insisted on coming to every doctor's appointment, and Lucas supported her, saying she was just excited to be a grandmother. She started buying baby items without consulting me, filling what would be the nursery with things I would never have chosen. When I tried to return some of the items to get things more suited to my taste, she threw a fit that lasted 3 days. Lucas made me apologize and keep everything she'd bought. The breaking point came at my baby's shower. Vanessa had insisted on planning it, despite my friends offering to help. She invited her friends instead of mine, chose a venue I hated, and picked decorations that looked like they were from 1985. But the worst part was the speech she gave. Standing in front of everyone, holding a champagne glass, Vanessa announced that she was so grateful that Zoe was giving Lucas the son he'd always wanted and that she couldn't wait to help raise her grandson the right way. She went on to detail all the ways she planned to be involved in the baby's life, from feeding schedules to sleep training to choosing his clothes. I sat there, 8 months pregnant and humiliated, while my husband smiled and nodded at his mother's speech about taking over my child's life. That night, I tried to talk to Lucas about boundaries once the baby arrived. He brushed off my concerns. "She's just excited, Zoe. She wants to be a good grandmother. Besides, we'll need the help. My mom raised me just fine on her own." I pointed out that I wasn't a single mother and didn't need to be replaced. Lucas got angry and accused me of being jealous of his relationship with his mother. We didn't speak for 2 days. As my due date approached, I became increasingly anxious. I'd heard Vanessa on the phone with her sister, discussing how she planned to stay in the hospital with us and help with the baby for at least the first month. When I mentioned that I wanted some alone time to bond with the baby, she laughed and said, "Oh honey, you'll be too exhausted to take care of him properly. It's better if someone experienced handles things." I tried one more time to get Lucas to understand. I explained that I needed him to prioritize our new family, to set boundaries with his mother, to support me during this vulnerable time. He promised he would, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. My due date came and went. Then, 5 days later, at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, I woke up to intense contractions. I'd been having Braxton Hicks for weeks, but these were different. They were regular, painful, and getting stronger. I shook Lucas awake. "Honey, I think this is it. The contractions are 5 minutes apart." Lucas groggily sat up and checked his phone. "Are you sure? Maybe we should wait a little longer." Another contraction hit, and I gripped the bed frame, breathing through the pain. "Lucas, we need to go to the hospital. Now." He was getting dressed when we heard Vanessa's voice from downstairs. "Lucas. Lucas, come here. Something's wrong." Lucas paused, one leg in his jeans. "What's she saying?" "I don't know," I gasped as another contraction peaked. "But we need to leave. These are getting really intense." Vanessa's voice came again, more urgent this time. "Lucas. Please, I need you. It's extremely urgent." Lucas looked torn. "Maybe I should just check on her real quick." "No," I said firmly. "We're having a baby. Right now. She can wait 10 minutes." But Lucas was already heading toward the door. "I'll be right back. She sounds really upset." I followed him downstairs, doubled over as another contraction hit. Vanessa was in her nightgown, clutching her chest dramatically. The moment she saw me, her performance intensified. "Oh, Lucas, thank goodness. I think I'm having chest pains. My heart is racing, and I can barely breathe. I think it might be a heart attack." Lucas immediately went to her side. "Mom, what happened? Should I call an ambulance?" No, Vanessa said weakly. "Just stay with me. I just need you here." I watched this charade, bent over the kitchen counter as another wave of pain washed over me. "Lucas," I managed between breaths, "we really need to go. These contractions are getting really close together." Vanessa shot me a look of pure disgust. "Stop it. Can't you hear my mommy needs me? Endure that pain, and if I hear you screaming again, it won't end well for you." I stared at her in shock. Lucas didn't even react to her threat. He was too busy fussing over his mother, taking her pulse and asking about her symptoms. "Lucas," I tried again, my voice strained. "Please. The baby is coming." Vanessa's weak voice suddenly became stronger. "Lucas, honey, I really think you should take me to the emergency room. This feels serious." "Of course, Mom. Zoe, can you drive yourself? Or maybe call an Uber?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband was suggesting I take an Uber to give birth while he drove his perfectly healthy mother to the hospital for her fake emergency. "Lucas, are you serious right now? I'm in active labor." He looked annoyed. "Zoe, please don't be dramatic. Women have been having babies forever. My mom might be having a heart attack." Vanessa was watching our exchange with satisfaction. As Lucas turned to get his keys, she looked directly at me and smirked. "He's mine, not yours. Remember that." In that moment, everything clicked into place. This wasn't just about Lucas choosing his mother over me in a moment of panic. This was Vanessa's final power play, her way of making sure I knew exactly where I stood in the hierarchy of Lucas's affections. She had deliberately faked an emergency to steal attention from the birth of our child, and Lucas was letting her do it. Another contraction hit, stronger than the others, and I knew I didn't have time to argue. I also knew, with sudden clarity, that I was done arguing. I was done begging my husband to prioritize his wife and child. I was done living as a second-class citizen in my own marriage. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream. I went back upstairs, grabbed my hospital bag, and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, I'm in active labor and need an ambulance. My contractions are 3 minutes apart, and I need to get to the hospital immediately. The dispatcher was professional and calm. What's your address, ma'am? We'll have a unit there in 10 minutes. While I waited, I sat down at my desk and wrote a note. My hands were shaking, both from the contractions and from adrenaline, but I needed to get this down while my thoughts were clear. Lucas, by the time you read this, I'll be at the hospital giving birth to our son. Yes, our son, the child you abandoned for your mother's fake emergency. I'm done. I'm done being the third wheel in my own marriage. I'm done pretending that your mother's manipulation is normal or acceptable. I'm done being treated like an inconvenience in my own home. Vanessa got what she wanted. She proved that even on the day your child is born, she comes first. She proved that you will always choose her over your own family. She proved that she owns you completely. But she made one mistake. She showed me exactly who you both are, and she did it at the moment when I needed you most. There's no coming back from this, Lucas. There's no excuse you can make, no apology that will fix what happened tonight. I won't be coming home. My lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements for our son. Since your mother is so eager to be involved in child-rearing, she can explain to him someday why Daddy wasn't there when he was born. Don't try to find me at the hospital. I've already arranged for security to keep you and Vanessa away until I'm ready to deal with you both. Your marriage is over. Choose your mother. You've been doing it all along anyway. Zoe, P.S., you might want to check on your mother's miraculous recovery. I'm sure her heart attack symptoms will disappear the moment she realizes her plan worked. I sealed the note in an envelope and left it on the kitchen counter where Lucas would see it when he came back from his mother's fake emergency room visit. The ambulance arrived just as I was putting the envelope down. The paramedics were wonderful, professional, reassuring, and focused entirely on getting me safely to the hospital. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I could see Lucas's car pulling out of the driveway, Vanessa in the passenger seat, probably directing him to the hospital where she'd waste everyone's time with her non-existent heart problems. The irony wasn't lost on me. We'd probably end up at the same hospital, Lucas rushing his perfectly healthy mother to the ER while I gave birth to his son with strangers. The birth was intense but beautiful. My best friend Stella arrived just as I was entering transition, having gotten my text from the ambulance. She held my hand and coached me through the final pushes, stepping into the role that should have been my husband's. Adrian Lucas Thompson was born at 8:47 a.m., weighing 7 pounds, 3 ounces. He was perfect. As I held him for the first time, I felt overwhelming love mixed with profound sadness. This little person would grow up in a broken home because his father was too weak to cut the cord with his toxic mother. Stella took photos and videos of those first precious moments, knowing that someday Adrian would want to see them. She also, at my request, documented everything for my lawyer. Lucas's absence from his son's birth wouldn't look good in custody proceedings. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Lucas tried to visit multiple times, but I'd instructed security to turn him away. I wasn't ready to face him, and I knew that seeing him would only make me angry at a time when I needed to focus on healing and bonding with Adrian. On the second day, Stella brought me a stack of messages. Lucas had been calling and texting nonstop, begging to see me and the baby. Vanessa, apparently, had made a full recovery from her fake heart attack after being thoroughly examined and finding nothing wrong. Lucas seemed shocked by this development, according to his messages. His texts started apologetic but quickly became angry when I didn't respond. By day 3, he was threatening to get a court order to see his son and demanding that I come home immediately. The entitlement was breathtaking. My lawyer, Isabella, was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law. She came to see me on day 2 and reviewed everything: the texts, the photos, Stella's witness statement about Lucas's abandonment during labor. "You have a very strong case," Isabella told me. "Abandoning your wife during childbirth to tend to your mother's fake emergency shows a severe lack of judgment and priority. Any family court judge will see this as concerning behavior." Isabella had already filed for legal separation and was preparing divorce papers. She'd also sent a formal letter to Lucas informing him that any contact with me needed to go through her office. When I was discharged, Stella drove me to the extended stay hotel I'd booked across town. I'd used our joint credit card to pay for a month, figuring Lucas owed me that much. I knew he'd eventually cancel the card, but I needed time to get my finances in order. The hotel had a kitchenette and enough space for Adrian's bassinet and baby supplies. It wasn't home, but it was peaceful. For the first time in years, I could make decisions without worrying about Vanessa's opinions or Lucas's reactions. I spent those first weeks focusing on Adrian and recovering from childbirth. Stella visited daily, and my mother flew in from Oregon to help. It was strange how much easier everything felt without Lucas and Vanessa's constant drama and criticism. Lucas's messages continued, alternating between pleading and demanding. He'd figured out which hotel I was staying at and tried to visit, but hotel security had been briefed to keep him away. Isabella had obtained a temporary restraining order after Lucas showed up at the hotel lobby at midnight one night, demanding to see his son. The breaking point came when Vanessa tried to circumvent the restraining order by pretending to be a delivery person. Hotel cameras caught her trying to sneak up to my floor with a fake flower delivery. Isabella used this incident to extend the restraining order to include Vanessa specifically. 3 weeks after Adrian was born, Isabella called with interesting news. Lucas had hired his own lawyer and was demanding immediate visitation rights. However, his lawyer had also let slip some important information during their negotiations. Apparently, Isabella said, "Your husband is claiming this was all a misunderstanding. He says his mother really was having chest pains that night and that you overreacted by leaving." His lawyer seems to think this strengthens their case. I laughed bitterly. Did they mention that Vanessa made a miraculous recovery the moment she got to the hospital? Actually, yes. The hospital records show she was examined thoroughly and released with no treatment needed. The ER doctor noted that her vitals were completely normal and that she showed no signs of distress once she arrived. She was discharged within 2 hours. This was perfect. Vanessa's fake emergency was medically documented as exactly that, fake. Isabella had more news. Lucas's lawyer is also pushing for reconciliation. Apparently, Lucas is willing to consider marriage counseling if you'll come home. Absolutely not, I said immediately. I meant what I wrote in that note. The marriage is over. I thought you'd say that. I've prepared a settlement proposal that I think is quite generous, considering the circumstances. You'll get primary custody of Adrian, the house, and half of all assets. Lucas can have supervised visitation until Adrian is older, at which point we can revisit. The house was the key. It had been Lucas's grandmother's, but he'd added my name to the deed when we married. Vanessa had no legal claim to it, despite living there. The thought of her having to move out was satisfying, though I wasn't planning to live there either. Too many bad memories. Isabella also informed me that Lucas's employer had been asking questions about his recent performance. Apparently, he'd been calling in sick frequently to deal with a family crisis and had missed several important meetings. Lucas worked for a conservative financial firm where family values were important, and his abandonment of his wife during childbirth wasn't playing well with his bosses. A month after Adrian was born, Lucas's lawyer requested a meeting. Isabella and I met with them at Isabella's office. Lucas looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, and exhausted. His lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Peterson, seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. "Mrs. Thompson," Peterson began, "my client is willing to make significant concessions to save this marriage. He acknowledges that mistakes were made and is prepared to enter counseling, establish boundaries with his mother, and even consider separate living arrangements." I listened politely, then responded calmly. "Mr. Peterson, your client abandoned me during active labor to tend to his mother's fake medical emergency. He threatened me in my own home, prioritized his mother's manipulation over his wife's safety, and has spent the last month harassing me instead of taking responsibility for his actions. There is no coming back from that." Lucas finally spoke. "Zoe, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I've been talking to Mom about boundaries." "Stop," I interrupted. "Just stop. The fact that you're still calling her mom while talking about boundaries tells me everything I need to know. You haven't learned anything." Lucas's face crumpled. "But what about Adrian? He needs his father." "Adrian needs a father who will put his family first. You've proven repeatedly that you're not that person." The meeting ended with Lucas agreeing to the settlement terms. He was granted supervised visitation every other weekend, with the supervision gradually decreasing as Adrian got older. Vanessa was explicitly banned from these visits for the first year. What I didn't expect was how quickly word would spread through our social circle. Within days of the settlement being finalized, I started receiving calls and texts from mutual friends who had heard various versions of what happened. Most were supportive, having witnessed Vanessa's behavior at social gatherings over the years. But some were shocked. My friend Jessica, who had known Lucas since college, called me in tears. "Zoe, I can't believe this. Lucas told everyone that you left him because you were jealous of his relationship with his mother. He's making it sound like you abandoned him during a family crisis." This didn't surprise me. Lucas had always been good at rewriting history to make himself look better. But I was prepared for this. "Jessica, I need you to know the truth," I said, and I told her everything. The fake emergency, the threats, the abandonment during labor. By the end of the call, Jessica was furious. "That's not the Lucas I thought I knew," she said. "How long has this been going on?" "Years. Vanessa has been undermining me since day one, and Lucas has been letting her do it." That night was just the final straw. Jessica became one of my strongest advocates. She started quietly correcting the narrative when people repeated Lucas's version of events. Soon more friends were reaching out, sharing their own observations about Vanessa's behavior that they'd been too polite to mention before. My friend Carol from book club admitted she'd always found Vanessa's behavior at baby shower games inappropriate. "She kept talking about her grandson like you weren't even there. And the way she criticized your parenting choices before the baby was even born? We all noticed, but we didn't know how to bring it up." Even Lucas's own friends started distancing themselves. His college roommate Mark called me to apologize for not speaking up sooner. "I should have said something years ago," Mark told me. "The way Vanessa treated you at parties, the way Lucas just let it happen. We all saw it. I'm ashamed that we didn't call him out on it." These conversations were validating but also painful. They confirmed what I'd suspected for years, that everyone could see how dysfunctional my marriage was except me. I'd been so deep in the situation that I'd normalized behavior that was clearly unacceptable to outsiders. Meanwhile, Lucas's attempts to control the narrative were backfiring. He'd apparently been telling people that I was suffering from postpartum depression, and that's why I'd left. When mutual friends reached out to check on my mental health, they found me calm, rational, and clearly making good decisions for myself and Adrian. The contrast between Lucas's story and reality became more obvious as weeks passed. People expected to find me falling apart, but instead I was thriving. I'd lost the pregnancy weight quickly, my skin was clear for the first time in years, and I seemed genuinely happy despite being a new single mother. Dr. Campbell, my obstetrician, noticed the change at my 6-week checkup. "Zoe, I have to say, you look incredible. How are you managing with the baby on your own?" "Honestly, it's easier than I expected," I admitted. "I don't have anyone criticizing my every decision or creating unnecessary drama. Adrian and I have our routine, and it works." Dr. Campbell had been my doctor throughout the pregnancy and had witnessed Vanessa's behavior at several appointments. She nodded knowingly. "Sometimes removing toxic stress from your life is the best medicine," she said. "Your blood pressure is lower than it's been in months." She was right. I hadn't realized how much chronic stress I'd been carrying until it was gone. Living without Vanessa's constant criticism and Lucas's weakness was like stepping out of the storm into sunshine. The most surprising support came from an unexpected source, Lucas's Aunt Camille, Vanessa's sister. She called me 3 weeks after the settlement was finalized. "Zoe, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Vanessa has been staying with me since she had to move out of the house, and I needed to speak with someone who understands what she's really like." I was cautious. "I'm not sure what you mean." Camille sighed deeply. "Honey, I've watched Vanessa manipulate and control Lucas his entire life. I've bitten my tongue for years because she's my sister, but what she did to you is unforgivable. I wanted you to know that not everyone in Lucas's family supported her behavior." Camille went on to share stories about Vanessa's manipulation that went back decades. How she'd sabotaged Lucas's previous relationships, how she'd guilt-tripped him out of college opportunities that would have taken him far from home, how she'd used fake medical emergencies before to get attention. "The night you went into labor wasn't the first time she'd pulled the chest pain routine," Camille revealed. "She did the same thing when Lucas graduated college and was talking about moving to Chicago for a job. Suddenly she was having heart palpitations and needed him to stay close to home. This information was both validating and horrifying. Vanessa's manipulation was an established pattern, not a one-time mistake triggered by stress." Camille also shared what Vanessa had been saying since moving in with her. "She's convinced that you'll come crawling back once you realize how hard it is to raise a baby alone. She keeps talking about how she'll be there to help you do it right when you inevitably fail." The delusion was breathtaking. Even after losing everything, Vanessa still believed she was the victim and that I was the problem. "I want you to know," Camille continued, "that I've told Vanessa she needs to find somewhere else to live. I can't enable her behavior anymore. What she did to you and that poor baby was inexcusable." After Camille kicked Vanessa out, Vanessa apparently tried to move in with Lucas in his small apartment. According to Camille, Lucas refused, saying he needed space to figure things out. Vanessa ended up in a studio apartment across town, using money from her Social Security to pay rent. The isolation was clearly affecting Vanessa's mental state. She'd been calling Lucas constantly, sometimes 20 times a day, demanding that he fight harder for custody of Adrian. When Lucas didn't respond as aggressively as she wanted, she'd accused him of not caring about his son. Stella, who had maintained some contact with mutual friends, reported that Lucas was struggling with his mother's increased neediness. Without me to act as a buffer, he was experiencing the full force of Vanessa's emotional manipulation for the first time. "He's starting to see what you dealt with every day," Stella told me. Apparently, he told Mark that his mother calls him at work constantly and shows up at his apartment unannounced. "He's getting a taste of what it's like to have no boundaries." This was exactly what I predicted would happen. With me gone, Vanessa had focused all her controlling energy on Lucas, and he was finally experiencing what I tried to tell him about for years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa had worked so hard to get rid of me because she saw me as competition for Lucas's attention. Now that she succeeded, she had Lucas all to herself, and he was miserable. Isabella called me with updates on Lucas's situation that she'd learned through professional channels. His new lawyer had withdrawn from the case, apparently frustrated with Lucas's inability to make decisions without consulting his mother about everything. His previous lawyer told mine that Vanessa was essentially trying to run Lucas's side of the custody negotiations, Isabella reported. She was calling their office directly, demanding updates, and even showed up to one meeting uninvited. It was highly inappropriate. Lucas had to find a third lawyer, which delayed proceedings and cost him money he couldn't afford. Each delay worked in my favor, as it demonstrated his inability to prioritize his son's needs over his mother's drama. The financial impact on Lucas was becoming severe. Between legal fees, rent for his apartment, and Vanessa's demands for financial support, he was barely getting by on his retail job wages. I learned from Camille that Vanessa expected Lucas to pay her rent, claiming that her Social Security wasn't enough to cover her expenses. She keeps telling him that it's his fault she had to move out of the house, so he should take responsibility for her living situation, Camille told me. The manipulation never stops with her. Meanwhile, I was thriving financially. The house had sold quickly and for more than expected, giving me a substantial nest egg. My job had granted me extended maternity leave, and I'd been doing some freelance work from home that was paying well. Without Lucas's impulse purchases and Vanessa's expensive demands, I was actually saving money for the first time in years. The contrast in our situations became more stark as time passed. I was building a stable, peaceful life with Adrian, while Lucas was trapped in an increasingly dysfunctional relationship with his mother. The very thing Vanessa had fought to preserve, her special relationship with Lucas, was destroying both of their lives. The most satisfying update came from Jessica, who had maintained some contact with Lucas's former co-workers. Apparently, word had gotten around about why Lucas was really fired, and his reputation in the financial industry was seriously damaged. "Nobody wants to hire someone who abandons their wife during childbirth," Jessica reported. "I heard from Tom at Lucas's old firm that when potential employers call for references, they're being told that Lucas had personal reliability issues that affected his work performance. Lucas was finding it nearly impossible to get interviews for jobs in his field. He'd been applying for positions at his previous level for months with no success. The retail job was supposed to be temporary, but it was becoming clear that it might be his reality for a long time." Vanessa, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly isolated. Camille had told other family members about Vanessa's behavior, and many of them were choosing to distance themselves. Vanessa's manipulation had worked for so long because people enabled it to keep the peace. But now that the full extent of her actions was known, even her own family was fed up. The weekly supervised visits with Adrian were going about as expected. Lucas was awkward and uncomfortable, clearly not sure how to interact with his son without Vanessa there to take over. He'd spent so many years letting his mother handle everything that he'd never learned basic parenting skills. The supervisor at the visitation center had mentioned to Isabella that Lucas seemed overwhelmed by simple tasks like diaper changing and feeding. "He keeps asking if he's doing it right and seems paralyzed when the baby cries," she reported. This was heartbreaking but not surprising. Lucas had never been allowed to develop confidence in his own abilities because Vanessa always swooped in to do things the right way. Now he was paying the price for that dependency. 2 months after Adrian was born, I received a call from Stella that made my day. Vanessa had been forced to move out of the house when the ownership transfer went through. Apparently, she'd assumed she could stay and take care of Lucas now that I was gone. Instead, she found herself homeless and had to move in with her sister in another state. Lucas, meanwhile, had been fired from his job after missing too many days and performing poorly when he was there. He'd moved into a small apartment and was working part-time at a retail store while looking for something better. The irony was perfect. Vanessa's manipulation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of keeping her son close, she'd driven away his wife and child, cost him his house and job, and ended up having to move away herself. Her victory had destroyed everything she claimed to be protecting. I eventually moved back to the house, but only long enough to pack up my things and put it on the market. The memories were too painful, and I wanted a fresh start somewhere else. I found a beautiful apartment across town with a nursery that got morning sunlight and a kitchen where I could cook without criticism. Adrian is 3 months old now, and he's thriving. He's a happy baby who loves to smile and is already trying to roll over. Lucas sees him every other weekend at a supervised visitation center, and while it breaks my heart that Adrian will grow up with divorced parents, I know I made the right choice. My lawyer recently told me that Lucas has been asking about reducing the supervision requirements for his visits. Isabella's response was firm: when your client can demonstrate that he's learned to prioritize his child over his mother's manipulation, we'll consider it. Vanessa has tried to contact me several times through social media and email, alternately apologizing and blaming me for destroying the family. I've blocked her on everything and instructed Isabella to send cease and desist letters if she continues. The most satisfying moment came last week when I ran into Lucas's former boss at the grocery store. He recognized me and asked how I was doing. "I'm sorry about what happened with Lucas," he said. "We all thought he had more sense than that. Leaving your wife during labor, we just couldn't understand it." Word had gotten around Lucas's professional network. His reputation was damaged, and it would be a long time before he could rebuild it. Some people might say my revenge was too harsh, that I should have given Lucas another chance. But those people don't understand what it's like to live as a second-class citizen in your own marriage, to be constantly undermined and disrespected, to have your boundaries trampled by a manipulative mother-in-law while your husband watches and does nothing. The night Vanessa faked her emergency wasn't the beginning of the problem, it was the final, undeniable proof of where I stood in Lucas's priorities. She gambled that she could humiliate me one last time and get away with it. She was wrong. I didn't plan an elaborate revenge. I simply stopped accepting unacceptable behavior. I stopped making excuses for Lucas's weakness and Vanessa's cruelty. I stopped pretending that love was enough to fix a fundamentally broken dynamic. The consequences they're facing now aren't my revenge, they're the natural result of their own choices. Lucas chose his mother over his wife and child. Vanessa chose manipulation over respect. They both chose their toxic relationship over a healthy family. I chose my son and myself. I chose dignity over desperation. I chose a future where Adrian will grow up seeing healthy boundaries and mutual respect, even if it means he grows up in 2 homes instead of 1. Looking back, I'm grateful for that terrible night. It was the push I needed to finally see clearly. Vanessa did me a favor by showing her true colors so dramatically. If she'd been more subtle, I might have spent years more trying to make it work. Now, as I watch Adrian sleep peacefully in his crib, I feel nothing but relief. We're safe, we're free, and we're building a life based on love and respect instead of manipulation and emotional blackmail. Lucas lost a wife and child. Vanessa lost her son and the grandson she'd been so eager to control. They both lost the family they claimed to value so much. And me? I gained something invaluable, the knowledge that I'm strong enough to choose myself and my child over a toxic situation, no matter how much I'd once loved the man who created it. The note I left that night changed everything. It was the moment I stopped being a victim of their dysfunction and started being the author of my own story. Some stories don't have happy endings. But sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to accept anything less than the respect and love you deserve. Sometimes, the best revenge is walking away and building something better. That's exactly what I did.